Welcome in, everybody. This is UFO Fantasy Football with me, Jackson, and Vin, who's right below me. And today we are going to do the fantasy football running back tiers, full PPR, correct?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get straight into it. And I think it's a pretty clear-cut top tier. And I think most people can agree that Jonathan Taylor would be number one.
Yeah.
This dude is just a monster. Kind of has been like almost since he's been in the league, and it's just like it's insane. He is the Cooper Cup of running backs, pretty much.
I think so. I mean, and it seems like he can stay healthy, which
Yeah.
is something that's
Knock on wood.
right. Yeah, I mean, last year he had 330 carries, 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, and he had 40 receptions for 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was about 30 fantasy points above second place last year. So it is similar to Cup from a wide receiver standpoint.
Yeah, and I don't really see any of that volume going down.
Right.
I mean, the Colts, they haven't really bolstered their wide receiver room that much. They got Alec Pierce, but that's kind of it. And I think they're just kind of gonna, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep running the ball.
I mean, obviously upgrade a quarterback, I would say, to Matt Ryan from Carson Wentz there. But even with that, I mean, I still think their plan is going to be to run Taylor. I mean, he's definitely the focal point of the offense. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be a little touchdown regression.
You would think so.
18 is going to be tough. I mean, in my quick projection that I did, I still have him like over 1,500 yards and like 14 touchdowns on the ground, which is still fantastic. You know, so I think he's a solid bet at the top of the draft.
I agree. Now, some people could make the argument that Christian McCaffrey could go number one, and I could see it. It's close.
Yeah.
I mean, when the issue is health, when he's healthy, he is the best running back. Like, he gets so many points, like it's nothing. Like,
yeah. I mean, because he can kill you from both rushing and receiving. I mean, it's like kind of having a running back and a receiver combined. I mean, he had a solid like over 18 points per game in the few games. I think he played 6 or 7 games last year before he got hurt. And I mean, yeah, it's just if he could stay on the field, I mean, he's their primary weapon also. I mean, he could easily get, 70, 80 receptions and over 1,000 yards, on the ground. So
easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I ran a projection. He came out actually as my number one running back in the projection.
Wow.
That's assuming he stays healthy. So if I'm ranking them, I'm still ranking him behind Taylor because I just feel more confident that Taylor can stay healthy.
Which is very fair.
Yeah.
But if you're like pick 3 and, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp go off the board, it's hard to not choose McCaffrey.
Yeah.
In any format, really. And plus, Sam Darnold, he's not the greatest quarterback. I feel like they're going to need to run more. And so he might get even more volume. Who knows?
I know.
All right. See. Yeah. All right. I think that's kind of the cutoff of the top tier. And again, these are the top 24 running backs. They're all very good. So these tiers are kind of deceitful. But next tier, we actually have a tie for the next guy. But I put Austin Eckler first. So he had a great year last year. His touchdown rate went very high considering his previous years. And that Chargers offense is just a monster. They're shooting from all angles, and Austin Eckler really benefits from it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was basically what we always hope Christian McCaffrey is going to be last year. I mean,
exactly.
He had 900 yards, 12 touchdowns, 70 receptions for 647 yards, and 8 more touchdowns. So he had 20 total touchdowns last year.
Which will probably come down, but still, he's going to get at least a good percentage of that if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I mean, this is when we always look at like TD progression or regression. He was my prime candidate last year for progression from that standpoint. I think he had 2 touchdowns in like all of the 2020 season. And so he was due, and then he way exceeded that with 20. So he definitely hit. I think I took him like 12th overall last year in one of our drafts there. But yeah, so that'll probably come down. That's a tough mark to hit again. But again, even if he's at 13, 14 total touchdowns, I mean, with the receptions that he gets and how involved he is in the offense, I think he's still going to be a top 5 guy, assuming he stays healthy. Yeah,
for sure. And tied with him in our rankings, we have Najee Harris, who, I mean, if you want to talk about volume, he's the guy. However, we don't know if that's going to carry over this year with new quarterback. And I know there was talks about him even saying that he's going to get like less workload, but that might just be on like blocking plays or something like that, where they need someone else just to give him a breather. Like it's kind of vague, but
yeah,
it's in the back of everyone's mind.
Yeah. I mean, I would say there are a lot of, I guess, when you're comparing him to some of these other guys, a few more question marks when you're comparing changes from last year. And you can approach it from a couple different ways. Like, so obviously he was there with Big Ben, who couldn't really move and was just checking down constantly to him. But with that said, so Najee Harris, just to give some stats here. So if you're comparing him to like Eckler, let's just say, so Eckler had around 200 carries and 900 yards. Najee Harris had 300 carries and 1,200 yards. And then Eckler had 70 receptions last year. Najee Harris had 74 receptions last year. But Eckler beat him from a receiving yard standpoint. He had over 600, and Najee was around 450-ish. And it was the touchdown issue. So that's why I think Harris is probably poised to get more touchdowns. He had a total of 10 last year, where Eckler had a total of 20. So, and, I know Pittsburgh wanted a more mobile quarterback, I believe, in that Matt Canada offense. They're going to try to do some more zone reads. So maybe that, maybe that quarterback, whoever it ends up being, probably Trubisky, can go downfield a little bit more. And maybe that'll actually open up some room for Najee Harris to run. So there's a lot of different ways to think about it, or maybe he'll get less opportunity because, their passing game is better than it has been. So I like the upside there.
Yeah, his efficiency definitely was not great last year, but I think Pittsburgh had one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and they bolstered that a little bit. I think it'll make at least a little bit of a difference to give him a little more efficiency, which I think if he's still getting even like 80-85% of his volume, I think he'll make it work with or even exceed what he did last year.
Yeah. Now, just to be fair, I did pull up, I believe it was from Pro Football Focus, the offensive line rankings. Steelers came in at a solid 30th.
Wow.
So impressive. They're not giving him a whole lot of credit for any improvements, in the offseason. So, I mean, that's yet to be seen. I think maybe some more mobility at the quarterback spot will just, maybe help that a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. Definitely not biased at all.
Yeah.
All right. The next guy in this tier, I think, would be Derrick Henry, the man, the myth, the legend, who just won't stop running.
Last year, I think he played 8 games. In the 8 games he played, he averaged 24.2 points per game.
Whew.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor was at 22.
Yeah.
So he exceeded that. I mean, he was on pace for some crazy numbers.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing a stat where it's like after he got hurt in week 8, he was still the leading rusher for like 3 more weeks and was not knocked out of the top 5 until like week 13 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so through 8 games, he had 937 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. I mean, So it's a 17 games season that they actually play. So, I mean, he was on pace for almost 2,000 yards and over 20 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he probably would have gotten it, honestly.
Probably, yeah.
Tennessee didn't really have many other options, especially when A.J. Brown was hurt.
Yeah. I mean, everything I was reading says he's motivated to have another good year and bounce back from the injury. There's question marks there too. I mean, they lost A.J. Brown, and I think they brought in Robert Woods and Burks in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But and he's still, I think he's 28 years old, so he hasn't hit that 30-year-old mark that running backs tend to hit. But it feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah, it does.
But I think he's a safe bet that you kind of know what you're going to get with him. You don't get a ton of the receptions, which I kind of like in a PPR format. But
yeah, I mean, he could be one of the top 3 in standard for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If not number 1.
It would probably it'd probably be him, or it's probably Taylor and him.
Yeah, probably Taylor, then Henry.
Yeah.
And I think they did draft Hassan Haskins too as a running back. So maybe they give him a little more breathers, and then he'll be even more efficient somehow. I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Especially after an injury.
Right. Now I don't expect him to catch a bunch of more balls, but the Titans are leading the league in vacated targets from last year. 351 vacated targets. And get this though, 65% of their targets inside the 10-yard line have been vacated.
Oh wow.
65% inside the 10. So, I mean, that's made for a monster running back to some of that stuff,
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, he did start catching like a few more passes than usual.
More. Yeah.
It's just like, I guess I never remember him catching any passes, and then I specifically remember at least like a game or two where he was used in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, if that continues, oh boy.
Yeah.
He'll be even scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel like we should bring this up before we get any farther. We talked about this before we started recording, and it seems like it's hard to draft any of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like there's question marks with every single guy except Jonathan Taylor, which is kind of scary, especially when my favorite strategy is going like running back heavy, at least in the first 2 rounds, sometimes 3.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I'm at like the 6th spot, I'm probably going to want to take Jamar Chase. Like, just.
Are you assuming Kupp and Jefferson are gone?
Assuming Kupp, Jefferson, Taylor, McCaffrey, and let's say Eckler are gone.
Yeah.
I think I would take Chase over Najee.
Yeah. See, that's interesting.
It's like I think he'll be a running back 1 for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's almost scary in a way.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, when we were going through all these running back options, there does seem to be more risk with almost every single one of these running backs. And, after like round 4, it really like drops off a cliff with quality. So, you kind of got to decide, while there is risk with a lot of these guys at the top of the draft from a running back standpoint, you'd still probably want to have 1 or 2 of those guys at least, rather than waiting around and seeing what's left like in the 7th round. You know what I mean? So it makes it interesting though.
Yeah, it's almost like I would almost prefer to draft in the back end of the draft this year, or number 1. If I could get the 1 spot, I'd love that. But like if I was like pick 9, I can guarantee myself like Leonard Fournette, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon maybe, and then snag like a Stephon Diggs or something on the way back. Like I'd be very happy with that.
Right.
But enough talk about drafting. Number 6, still in this tier, I think. It's kind of borderline. I'm going to go Dalvin Cook. Okay. Now, I have Cook ranked higher than you do. I have him at 3, which is surprising even for me looking back at it.
I know.
But I think I'm just taking into account the probable regression from Eckler and Najee and the age of Henry and coming off an injury.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like Dalvin Cook is always really solid, but it's also when he's healthy.
Right.
And he's pretty injury prone. It's like he's going to miss like at least 2 games a year almost.
Right.
But I think he's very efficient with what he's given in those games he does play. And if he stays healthy a whole year, I think he could definitely make his case for number 3.
Yeah. I mean, I have him at 6 overall. And I even felt, honestly, I was wondering if that was too high, to be honest. I mean, so he finished 11th overall for running backs in points per game last year in the games he played. I think he played 13 games, which is solid. And I don't think he caught as many balls as he had in previous years, which I think that's the reason that was a little bit. But I do, obviously he's got the injuries, but I moved him ahead of Kamara and some guys like that because, Kamara's got some of the off the field issues that he's dealing with that makes it a little more uncertain. And Cook, they did bring over the new head coach, was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. So I'm sure he can figure out a way to maybe use him even a little bit, better than he was being used in Zimmer's offense there. So, I mean, I would. So this is where we differ too. I would probably put Cook in that next tier with the next handful of guys we will discuss, but he's definitely like borderline.
Yeah. All right. And speaking of that next tier, I think we're going to start that off with Joe Mixon, who had a fantastic year last year and helped me get to the Super Bowl in our league. Surprisingly, I could not believe it. But man, that Bengals offense it's shooting on all cylinders. And when people have to cover Chase and Higgins and Boyd, and last year was Uzama, I kind of left the running room open all for Joe Mixon. And he ate that up pretty handily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did he have? He had like 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. And then he also had 42 grabs for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So it was like a really solid year. And like all of that kind of seems like he can do it again.
There's no reason he can't.
Right. I mean, I think that's why he's probably one of the safer options, to be honest. I mean, he played, I think, all year last year. I don't think he missed any significant time.
Yeah.
And you kind of, those are really good numbers, and there hasn't really been a whole lot of changes. They actually added to their offensive line and bolstered that up, so that might actually help. So yeah, I mean, I like Mixon.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like I was saying, like if you're drafting like 9th or 10th overall, I bet you could probably snag him, and I'd be very happy with that.
Right.
All right. Next guy on the list. Not the best offense compared to the Bengals, but DeAndre Swift and the Lions is next. I think he definitely gets a boost in PPR.
Oh yeah.
Is what we are ranking, so that's why he's probably so high. But it's like, I don't know, they don't have a whole lot of weapons in Detroit. I know there's Hawkinson, and there's the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
But, I mean, take those 2 guys out, it's all Swift.
Yeah, I mean, they ran the ball really well last year, and it seemed like they were, like, committed to it. And Swift just sort of...
he's got the name for it.
Yeah, right. But he feels like he's got the talent, like he's poised to break out even beyond what he was being utilized last year. Like, he had 151 carries. He only played 13 games, but that translates to like, I think just under 200 carries. So that's possible that could go up if he plays all 17. He had 62 receptions within those only 13 games as well. So, I mean, if you extend that out to a full season, I mean, that's, approaching that Eckler and Najee Harris type reception level. And last year he had 5 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. So he's poised to benefit and get more touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Just he seems like he should be in that 10 to 12 touchdown range at any given year. So I think there's a lot of factors that are, have his arrow pointed up.
Yeah, and I think just in general, the Lions are going to be better this year. Like, if you really look back, they had a lot of like close one-score games. They just happened to lose them all. But then they won like two games right at the end. And I don't know. I think they're going to. I'm not going to say do well, but definitely do better than 2 or 3 wins.
Right.
Okay, the next guy on this list. Oh, did you have something to say?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think the Lions are going to be very good. But, I think I agree, though. I think maybe they'll go from, 3 wins to maybe 6 wins. Something
which,
like that.
For the Lions, that's excellent. All right, the next guy on this list has some question marks around him. Alvin Kamara. Now, it's all off the field issues, which I don't really know everything about. No one does. But we're just going to talk about how he is on the field. And I think this ranking kind of takes into just consideration the question marks just as a general. Because I think if there was no question marks, he'd probably be maybe above Mixon, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
He's just a very talented player, especially PPR, like I said before. And I don't see why any of his usage would go down, really.
No, last year was his first year without Drew Brees, and it was Sean Payton's last year there. He saw a major uptick in carries, where he had, I think he played 13 or 14 games last year. He had 280 carries in those games, which is way up. His receptions were down a little bit. He had 240 carries, but that was in 13 games. His receptions, he had 47 receptions. He had a solid 9 touchdowns overall last year. This year Sean Payton's gone, but Dennis Allen's going to be the head coach there, was the offensive coordinator. So there's some consistency there.
I could see his receptions go down a little bit. Just, hopefully Michael Thomas is healthy. They got Chris Olave. They signed Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
So they will probably be passing more, and I guess it's the actual wide receivers this time. He's right. Kamara's not competing with Deontay Harris and Marquez Callaway and people like that.
Yeah.
It's got some actual competition.
Yeah. I ran a quick projection based off of last year, how he performed, and obviously making some slight adjustments for this year. But he came out 6th overall in my projections, which maybe was too high. I got to take a look at him and refine that a little bit, and that's assuming he's full go. There's no suspension or anything like that. I don't know. So I think if we're going based off tiers, I think this is the tier that fits him well.
Yes, for sure. He definitely fits around these guys.
Yeah.
And I'd say he also fits around Mr. Leonard Fournette, who I'm very high on him this year. I definitely want to grab him in drafts. It seems like he's it seems like he's dropping to the mid to end of the second round, and I'm just if I get the opportunity, I would love that.
Yeah, Fournette, he gets way more receptions, I think, than people think.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. He played 14 games last year, and he had 69 receptions. He almost had 70 receptions in those games. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. Then he had 800 yards on the ground and 8 more touchdowns. And the Bucs have an injured Godwin.
They got rid of Ronald Jones.
Lost Ronald Jones. No Gronk.
No AB.
Right. Yeah, so there's room to grow there. I think there's touchdown progression. There's available vacated targets. So I think and he just signed a 3-year deal, which gives me more comfort that the team may be a little bit more invested in him as opposed to him just playing on a 1-year deal, where he's a little more disposable to them. So, yeah, he's kind of filling that James White role, but he's still getting the carries too, from Brady's Patriot days there. So I like it. I think it's actually, if you were able to get him at the bottom of the second round, that's really solid.
Yeah, especially as an RB2. If you drafted another guy in the first round,
oh yeah,
you're set.
Oh, you'd be set. Yeah.
All right, and then I would say the last guy in this tier, roughly, is Aaron Jones, and that is mainly because the Packers, they have no one to throw to. They're gonna have to use the running backs to throw to them, and I think Aaron Jones is probably going to be the main beneficiary of that. I think A.J. Dillon will get some work for sure, and I love him later in the draft.
Me too.
At this point, Aaron Jones is poised for a pretty good year, especially in PPR.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, him and A.J. Dillon just about split carries last year. I think they each had roughly 5 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, though, had 65 targets, 5 receiving touchdowns last year. Ton of vacated targets, like you said. And it just seems like he's the one weapon that they do have, that they can utilize both on the ground and in the air. And I feel like he's been rising up in ADP a little bit. Maybe people are starting to come around and remember what he's been able to do the last couple of years, and that he's going to be their primary weapon. So yeah, I mean, in that projection that I ran, he came in 8th overall. Because it's that PPR stuff that really boosts him up, because I think it's realistic. I think it's realistic for Fournette, Aaron Jones, and Swift to all have over 70 receptions this year if they play full seasons.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones' ADP, according to Fantasy Pros, is actually 14th out of the running backs right now. So if you get him at 14th, wherever that is, like second, third round, somewhere around there, I think that's a steal.
Who do you have who's going ahead of him right now? The couple?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley is one spot ahead of him, which surprises me.
Okay.
And then it's Fournette, Kamara, Nick Chubb is 10th.
Wow.
And then DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams, and then the guys we already talked about.
Wow, Javonte Williams too up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind Javonte Williams and Chubb and Barkley. I mean, there's aspects of each of them, but I would go Aaron Jones over all of them.
I agree.
No.
I think he's just safer and as a whole.
Yes. Exactly.
All right, and then the last guy for this video, he will start the next tier. We just talked about him, Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
He is definitely a steal in Dynasty. I'll say that first.
Oh yeah.
Definitely want him in Dynasty. But in like normal redraft, he's gonna be good. He should be good. But Melvin Gordon is still there. And last year they split almost 50-50.
Exactly. 203 carries each.
Wow.
Yeah. But towards the end of the year, the last 6 games of the season, it looked like Javonte Williams was getting a little bit more work. I think he had like 14 carries a game was what he was averaging over those last 6 games. I mean, I would almost expect. Obviously, Javonte Williams is on a rookie deal. I think he's in his second year now. Mel Gordon, they almost didn't re-sign. He was like testing the market. Nobody signed him. Broncos brought him back on a 1-year deal. But it seems like this feels like that first year they were, kind of easing Javonte Williams into it. I feel like, if they each had 200 carries last year, I could see it more like 240 to 160 this year.
I could see that.
You know what I mean? And that would elevate Javonte Williams to having like a real opportunity to be a top 10 back from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that offense just as a whole is getting better.
Right.
With Russell Wilson. Maybe that takes away some rushing attempts. I don't know. But I think just as a whole, it'll be better. And I think it's going to be good for Javonte.
Yeah. And they'll be in that. I mean, we've talked about it before, that high flying, division really where I think it's just going to be high scoring, and he's going to be, a main part of that offense.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and that's going to be it for this video. So if you liked it, please like the video, subscribe if you enjoy it, And part 2 will be coming out soon. So stay tuned for that. Until then, see ya.